So today I want to talk about setting up an ISDN PRI. We have a router, a Cisco router in Korea. It's a 2911, and we have put in a PRI card. It's HWIC, and in my process of setting it up, since I am fairly new, this is the first time I've set up a PRI, ISDN PRI. There's a lot of information that I found, and a lot of information that I couldn't find that is needed. And I scoured the internet and I found a lot of videos, and it did teach me some stuff, but it didn't have what I felt I felt like there was a video that needed to be more comprehensive, that included more things. And by no means do I want to declare that this video will contain everything, but I hope that there's information that people can learn from, information that I missed and that I had to go back and learn and figure out. Okay, so right now we're on a router that we actually physically have in Korea, and I'm here in the States. And so I've just SSH'd into it. And so first things first, just to give you a little background on what we have, this is, we're still missing some information from the carrier. So when you get when you order a T1 or E1 line, there's information that you need. You need to know, well, obviously, is it a T1 or E1? At this point, we really don't know yet because the carrier hasn't gotten back to us what line they're providing. So that's kind of an issue. And then we have, framing, line coding, and other things. And I'll go over those here in a second. So you have the router. Well, first you should physically have the router, and then if you need to buy when you get your PRI card, you can get ours is a single interface. You can get double interface and quad interface and whatnot. But we just have a single interface because that's all we need. You get the card and you install it into the router. Also, one thing I should mention is that make sure that you have enough PVDMs to support all your channels. So right now in our router that we sent to Korea, we only have a PVDM 3-16, which means it can only do 16 channels, which means we need a partial E1 or T1, whatever it ends up being. It's going to be partial. Meaning we're not going to get the full either 24 or 30, I guess 23 or 30 channels. For the T1 would be 23 and the E1 will be 30 channels. So make sure you look into that. Make sure that you have sufficient PVDMs to support all of your voice calls and channels. Okay. So first off is, let's say you got the router, you installed the card, then you boot the router back up. First things first is you need to configure the card to what kind of card type you're going to be. So we're going to go config T. Here we go. Config T, and you're going to go to card type. And if we see here, we see E1 or T1. So ours is an E1, it's already configured, so I'm just going to go with E1, but T1 would be the same thing. Sorry, let's see. And then you need to put the, so after that, after the card type E1, you're going to put the card slot. Ours is in, or the WIC slot, so ours is in 0 space, and it's, so that's the card slot, sorry, and then here's the WIC slot. So what is it? What's the WIC slot? Again, ours is 0. And that's it. So we hit enter, and boom. That's it. That's how you configure. But that's the first step that needs to happen, so you can configure the card, the PRI card, and then from there on you can configure the ISDN settings and all the other important settings. Okay. So first we'll just do we'll name the switch type, and this is information that you need to get from the carrier. Is the ISDN switch type, primary, and then if we hit question mark here, you'll see we have these right here. And depending on the country, I believe here in the United States, it's Net5 is a good one, or is a main one that they use. Again, the first PRI that I've set up happens to be in Korea, and I don't know yet because the carrier hasn't got back to us on what primary type. I set it to Net5 just so I could start configuring the card. I can change that. We can go back and change that at any time if it's not Net5. And then we're going to go, so we've set the ISDN switch type, and then we're going to go into the controller. Controller E1, and then this happens to be, you have to select the slot and card type and whatnot. So that happens to be mine. It has 3 zeros. Sometimes it'll be 2. Just depends on what yours is. So now I'm actually in the configuration of the controller, and we want to set the clock source. Well, yeah, we can do that. We can select. Let's do the PRI groups first. So we're going to do PRI group question mark, and we do want to do time slots. Time slots, and we're going to do, since we are on an E1, and so T1s go 1 through 24, and E1s go 1 through 31, but because we only have half the PVDMs that we need, we can only do half, which is 1 through 16. And then another important, so if it was a full, so this is a partial, this is considered a partial E1 right here. So if we're going to do a full, it would be like that, 31, but it's not. So this is just for our case right now. And one very important thing is we see this voice DSP. That is a keyword that is necessary if you want your voice calls to go to be handled as voice. I was going to read. So when you use the PRI group command for voice, then the voice DSP keyword is required. So make sure that was something that I got hung up on, but anyway, so that's that. Now this is going to say the first definition of the primary group must be removed, blah 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 blah. But I've already set it. It's already set up. That's why you're getting that. That's why I'm getting this message. If you set it up properly, you won't get any message. It'll just go on like normal. Okay, so next thing we want to do is we actually want to get into, let's see, we want to do the clock source. Clock source. And we have internal and line. Internal, we want to use line for the most part, is line because that means that the router is getting its clock source directly from the carrier, from the line. And then internal obviously means that the router's getting its clock source internally. So I'm going to do line, and that's all we need. Bits and independent, I'm not 100% sure what those are, but we don't. As far as this setup right here, we don't need that. And so now we need to get into the interface of the D channel of the PRI group. So when we set up the right here, when we set up the PRI groups, when you set up a T1 or E1, you get 30 channels or 15 channels. Now, the D channel, so all the bearer channels are what the traffic is actually going to go on, and then you have a data channel that has all the other information, caller ID information. So that channel is 15. There, I'll just get to it real quick, and you can see. Interface, serial, make sure there's no space there. Serial 00, and then 15. So 15 is the data channel or the D channel for the E1 that we're on. So whether you're full 1 or partial E1, it's always going to be 15 is going to be the data or D channel. Now Cisco numbers it from 0 to 15, which gives you 16 channels, and so up here we had to do 1 through 16, just the way it's done. It's kind of weird. T1 is going to be 1 through 24, but the D channel for T1 is 23. So it's going to be 0 through 23. So channel 0 is technically the first channel. Anyway, so we're going to get into this interface, and we need to do a command is ISDN incoming voice. And if we see here, we have data, modem, or voice. Incoming voice calls will be handled as either data, modems, or voice. And we want voice, obviously, so that's what we're doing. And we hit enter. Okay, I had to edit some of the screen, so that's why it's different. But okay, so we're left off was ISDN incoming voice, and we want to handle all incoming voice calls as voice. And then another very important command is, of course, the no shutdown. We got to open up that interface. Okay, so from there, I want to show you. So if you ever have to go in and change the PRI groups, so remember we went into the controller E1. And we did the PRI group time slots, right? So we did, on this one we had to do 1 through 16. Now, if we ever have to remove that and change that, one thing that we need to do is we need to negate that command. So for example, let's try to get rid of that. No PRI group time slots 1 through 16 voice DSP. Voice interface must be shut down before deleting PRI group. So, which means we need to go into the interface, the serial interface again, and just do a shutdown. And then there's also one other place. Now I'm going to turn this back on because I need it up. But also we need to go into voice port. Voice port. Dash 15. And right here also, if it's been turned on, I believe, would be a shutdown. But as of right now, we want to... actually, I'm going to leave that shut down because I haven't done anything with it yet. That's just FYI. That's something that I ran into that I had to figure out. Okay. So also, while we're in here, we need to do the network clock configuration, and there's a whole bunch of documentation on the network clock. But basically, it boils down to these commands. Network clock participant, and if we look at the options, we want to say what's the slot or WIC, and that is 0. That's it. Whoopsie, I guess, nope. Oh, I'm sorry. It's telling me which one, and that or WIC. Oopsie. Zero. It's actually, so for mine this is WIC 0, and then network clock select, and what's the priority? And the priority is 1. And then is it, well, since this is an E1, it's going to give you just the E1, and we're going to say E1. And then I believe I have to do the number. So obviously I've already done this, and so that we get another controller is already configured at the given priority because I've already set it. Okay, so now we just kind of want to switch gears, and so everything up until now that we have talked about is relatively easy to find on Cisco documentation or other YouTube videos. A couple of things that I want to point out that was a little bit harder for me, at least, and it may vary depending on some people. It may be easy and others may be hard, but for me, setting the card type, I had no idea, being brand new as far as setting a PRI card, not knowing too much about them. That was a new experience. So setting up the card type was new to me. The PRI group time slots 1 through 16 voice-DSP. That voice-DSP keyword was also new that I had to do some research about. From what I've been told, that is a semi-recent addition to the Cisco iOS. And also the network clock select and participate were things that I had read, but I didn't quite know where to put them. And I also want to mention that I did get, I had a hard time understanding what the difference was between like a T1 CAS and a PRI CAS, right, and a ISDN PRI. I thought they were all the same thing, but they're different. T1 CAS or E1 CAS is different from like an ISDN PRI, and even like a T1. So depending on the documentation you read or forums, T1 PRI and an ISDN PRI are different. So make sure that you educate yourselves on the difference between those things. So we're working on ISDN PRIs, which for CAS PRIs, you're going to need like DS0 groups, or you have the E&M settings and things like that. So we're not going to get into that. That's not our purpose here today. So what I'm going to go over is a few things that I found. So we're going to go into voice service VoIP, and there's a couple things that we need to set up that I wasn't aware of. So you can set up your fax protocol, set up your modem pass-through, or your fax protocol pass-through, whatever, those are standard things. But what I wasn't aware of is H.225. Sorry, what am I doing here? Display dash. Oh, sorry. H323. Okay, so we go under H323, and then we do H.225 display IE CCM compatible. And then we also do call preserve. Now it's going to give me this warning: configure media inactivity detection to avoid hung calls is highly recommended. I'm not going to worry about that right now because this is just a test setting. But so the H.225 display, that command is to allow the Cisco, the CUCM or Cisco manager to ignore the H.225 facility messages, and then to process the H.225 notify messages used to display in the caller ID or the calling name on the IP phone. So it's for caller ID purposes. So that's, if you want that function, caller ID, that's a very important command to have. And then the call preserve, and this is right from the Cisco documentation. The call preserve command causes the gateway to ignore socket closure or socket errors on H.225 or H.245 connections for active calls, allowing the socket to be closed without tearing down calls using these connections. So that's important as well. And we're going to exit here. And then another thing that we need is voice class H2321. Yeah, there we go. Did I just mess up on the... I must have messed up. Okay. And we'll do this. The voice tag, we're going to do 1. And it's the H.225 timeout. TCP establish. And then we want to do timeout value in seconds. We're going to do 3 seconds. And this command, and then again, this is Cisco documentation, this command sets the H.225 TCP timeout value for the specified voice class. The value argument indicates the timeout value in seconds, and so this command is to be used in conjunction with the call preserve command. So make sure we need to make sure that we add that in there. Okay, next one is for music on hold. So if you have, at least in our situation, we have we have our cluster here in the States, and then we have our remote office in Korea. And so in order for Cisco Call Manager to stream the hold music to that router, we need to do ccm-manager music on hold. That's it. And that will allow it to stream music from the cluster to the router. All right, so we're going to go into voice port -15. So we're going to go into the voice port area, and one very important command is the bearer cap. And then if we hit that, we'll see speech and 3100. We want speech, and I believe that's all the commands. Yep. So the bearer cap speech is a very important, and it's a long explanation, in Cisco documentation of why we need it. But basically, it has to do with the Q931 setup messages and making sure that it allows specific encoding, so that if the telco exchange equipment allows the encoding, this will indicate back to the originating equipment, and the call is attempted to the destination. So again, by all means, look that up and get more in depth into it. But this is a command that we do need for this connection. Also, what we need to be aware of is that when we have the carrier, they have their PBX box. Sometimes they communicate over SIP, and sometimes they communicate over SIP and H323. And so we need to make sure that we are allowing those connections. So there's VOIP, and so we are allow connections, and we do SIP to H323 and 23 to SIP, and that, and also we want to make sure we have SIP to SIP. So those are the four. We need to make sure that we have those, because if the PBX does communicate over H323, then we need to be able to communicate over that protocol. And then also another thing, by default, when you talk about encapsulation, by default, the encapsulation on these routers or on the PRI card is HDLC. But if the carrier uses PPP, then we need to make sure that we change that encapsulation. And we can encapsulation. We see, we have the HDLC, which is again by default. We have and the PPP. These are the two main ones. What we can also do is, if we're not sure, like in this case, I'm not sure, because I don't have that information from the carrier yet, which encapsulation. But what we can do is we do auto detect. Oh. All right, sorry, I messed up on that. I got it mixed up. So we can do auto detect encapsulation, and if we look at the options, we can do PPP. We can also do V120, but I'm going to leave that out for now. You can actually do multiple at the same time, so we can actually do auto detect encapsulation PPP, and then we can also add another one, auto detect encapsulation V120. So we can add multiple on there, and then leave the default as HDLC. So but that's important information to know and to configure. And so we're going to do that, and we're set. That's really all the information that I had for today that I wanted to share. I wanted to just make this so that people hopefully will have an easy resource on where to find some of this information all in one, as you set it up. And I apologize, this is like this is my first video, so it's definitely not up to par. But so please be easy in your comments. But I hope this has been informative, and that people will actually find good resources in this. As I've been, over the last several months, been gathering information and putting it and compiling it into a somewhat organized format. It's been really helpful to me, and I want to be able to share that with others who are still learning or on that path and still trying to figure it out. So, if you have any questions, leave a comment and let me know. Thanks. Bye.